This conference will now be recorded.
A very good morning to one and all present here. I, Ms. Neha Mahajan, Executive Organizer, on behalf of Biosetup Life Sciences, take this honor to welcome our Founder Coordinator, Argedeep Das Sir, Event Coordinator, Dr. Kavita Paul Ma'am, Somaji Bhargavi Ma'am, and our today's eminent guest speaker, Dr. Tejaswini Pachpor. Faculty members, organizers, and all my dear student participants, I welcome you all for the webinar on the topic Building Yeast, my toolkit for multidisciplinary research organized by Biosetup Life Sciences. I hope you all are safe and good at your end. Before starting the session, a humble request to all the participants, please do not share your audio, video, or screen sharing in order to avoid any kind of disturbance. If you have any doubts during the session, please use the chat box. Filling of the feedback form is mandatory. Now let me tell you about Biosetup Life Sciences. Biosetup Life Sciences is a hub of scientific research and learning approved by ISO 9001-2015 certified organization and also MSME registered under Government of India. We have multidisciplinary team of eminent and experienced faculty members and research associates that provide supports to aspiring students in life sciences. We have successfully organized many webinars, workshops, internships, e-training programs, certification courses, career counseling, and competitive exam preparations for CSIR, IIT JAM, GATE, IISc, and DBT. We are continuously working for the career improvement of students. As we all are aware, we have been facing difficult times during the ongoing pandemic since 2 years. But we believe in not stopping and giving quality education to the budding minds through online platform. You must have also heard that empty rake makes more noise. So it is important to keep filling the bucket of knowledge through any sources available. Keeping this in mind, now I would like to introduce our event coordinator, Dr. Kavita Paul ma'am. She is a scientist at Advanced Center for Treatment Research for Cancer, Tata Memorial Center, Mumbai, India. She has vast experience in the field of nanodrug delivery, cancer biology, clinical studies. She has done her graduation and post-graduation in microbiology from Nagpur University. Ph.D. in biology from Pune University, India. She has 10 years of teaching experience and research. Her areas of expertise are nanomedicine, drug delivery system, preclinical and clinical studies. She has 2 patents, 15 publications. She has also completed her MBA in project management. Apart from research work, her interest lies in medical writing as well. Now I request Dr. Kavita Pal to introduce our today's eminent speaker, Dr. Tejaswini Pachpor. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Sneha. Thank you, Dr. Tejasvini, for accepting the invite by Biosetup. Let me take this opportunity to introduce Dr. Tejaswini Pachpor. She has done her M.Sc in Zoology in 2003 from Pune University and Ph.D. in Microbiology in 2010 from Agarkar Research Institute, Pune University. She has a vast experience of around 10 years in teaching and research in the fields of microbiology and nanobiotechnology. Her efforts have paid her publications in peer-reviewed journals and 2 patents as well. She has also cleared national eligibility test conducted by CSIR Government of India and state eligibility test for PhD conducted by Maharashtra government. She was a visiting fellow at NCI NIH and she has done certificate course from NIH in Scientist Teaching Science Pedagogy course and Data Scientist in Toolbox by Johns Hopkins University. She is well versed in statistical analysis using R programming and her area of expertise lie in molecular biology and microbiology. There are many things to tell about Dr. Tejaswini, but I am putting a pause here and requesting you, madam, to start with your motivational talk on your journey in science. Dr. Tejaswini, please, I welcome on behalf of Biosetup Organizing Committee. Over to you, ma'am.
Very good morning to all of you, and thank you for inviting me for this invited talk. It's a pleasure to join all of you in on this forum. And for past 1 year, almost since we are held up in our houses, this has become a platform for exchanging our thoughts. And this, I think this would be a good opportunity to talk to you, all of you, about this very interesting model system, which I've been working on for last 10 years. And that's why the title says that building Yeast, my toolkit for multidisciplinary research. So before I start with this presentation, I would like to tell you something about this very interesting model system, that is Yeast. We all know yeast for brewing, baking. All of us have used, if you are into all these things, you have also used yeast right from your school days. You have learned about yeast, but very few of us know that this particular model system can be used for multidisciplinary research. I have used yeast for applied research. I've used yeast for basic research as well. And the reason I've titled it as a building yeast, because I have used recombinant yeast. So when I tell you about my journey using yeast as a model system, I'll be also telling you the stories about how we built those yeast as recombinant yeasts. So let me take you to this particular journey where I'll be talking about two of my research projects. One is going to be about my PhD project and one of my postdoc projects also. So before I start with the talk, this shows you my journey from bachelor's to master's, PhD, and my postdocs. So you can see that there are places where I put up yeast pictures. This is to tell you how yeast has been there. Rather, I should say that I've been working on the model system, using it for different aspects. That's why I see it like it's a multidisciplinary model system. It can be used for multiple research objects, and very few of us know that yeast has been used for studying cell cycles, aging, and it has also been used as a vehicle for carrying out research related to plasmids, related to basic molecular biology also. So let's see about the journey. So yeast as a model system, I have used yeast as a model system for different projects as I mentioned earlier. These are few of the projects which I'll be talking about today. First one was yeast metal interactions, which was my PhD work. It was titled as Enhancement of Intracellular Metal Accumulation in Yeast with special reference to phytokeratin synthesis. As we go through the research work which I'm going to talk with you, I am going to tell you about the techniques and the equipments which I have used. See, what we feel when we are doing our masters, when we are doing our research related to masters, is if I'm learning a particular technique, I can use it only and only for one particular research. It doesn't go that way. I did my master's in molecular biology because I was interested in learning more about molecular biology techniques. And then eventually, when I moved into my PhD topic, I had to apply the knowledge which I gained. Molecular biology basically is a tool. Even microbiological techniques, culturing techniques, they are tools which I applied in my research. So never keep it as a tight compartment. You need to be very fluidic, that it doesn't have to be like, okay, I'm doing M.Sc in biochemistry, so I can never venture into nanobiotechnology, or I can never go into a basic cell biology research. No. We are in an era where we work a lot into fields which are initially they were considered as tight compartments, but now we do a lot of cross compartmental research also. Like I can work with engineers, I can work with physicists, I can work with chemists, and we come up with something which is a collaborative work. So all these three stories which I have here, they all include very different kinds of applications and research. So that's why I thought I'll just talk to you about all these. So first one, as I told you, was yeast metal interactions. Then second one is my postdoctoral research, my first postdoc, which was done in Wisconsin, Madison, USA. Where that's the point where I used yeast for biofuel production or ethanol production. I am sorry, but I can hear some disturbance. Can you take care of that? Oh, thank you. The third one is usage of yeast as a model system for performing cell biology based research, where we use it for understanding cell cycle, chromosome segregation, etc. It was a core cell biology based research. So I'm not going to talk about that today. I'm going to focus on the applied part. Today, that is now what I'm working on, that is the current projects which I'm doing with my master students include usage of yeast, but not the standard yeast, that is Saccharomyces cerevisiae or Saccharomyces pombe. What I am currently exploring are the wild yeast. There is a wide variety of yeast. So currently what I'm working on is wild yeast for probiotics, hydrocarbon degradation, and bioethanol production. So at the end of the talk, I'll talk a little bit about it. So let me start with the first part. That was my PhD work, and this work was carried out at two institutes. Agarkar Research Institute, which is based in Pune, and it's a DST funded institute, that is Department of Science and Technology funds the research in this institute. My work was also supported by industry, and part of that work was technology transfer. So I'm going to talk about that part also. And a patent was filed for that work. The patent got granted recently, and the company is using that technology. So I'm really happy when I talk about it, because I personally feel that the research should be applicable, it should be useful for other people. Then the second institute where the part of the work was carried out, the recombinant construction was carried out, was Institute of Microbial Technology, that is IMTech. IMTech is based in Chandigarh. It is a CSIR Institute of Microbial Technology. Wonderful institute with amazing scientists, and a lot of very interesting work is carried out at that place. So I consider myself really fortunate that I got to work in these two institutes. So before we start with the actual talk about yeast metal interactions, I would like to give you a brief introduction to these yeasts. Yeast, you all have heard about Saccharomyces cerevisiae, Saccharomyces pombe. There are other yeast varieties also. Cluveromyces is there, Pichia is there, Codemia is there, Candida is there. So just like we require metal, all animals, plants require metal. Just a second, please. Okay, I'm so sorry about that. So yeast require metals for different processes. Just like we have micronutrient requirements, yeast also have micronutrient requirements, and they take up certain metals as essential metals like zinc, copper, iron, and they also have mechanisms to deal with toxic metals, that is chromium, cadmium, mercury, etc. So when I started working in my lab, that is at Agarkar Research Institute, my guide, that is Dr. Paknekar, was working on yeast metal interactions, and the lab was transitioning from pure yeast metal interaction based research into nanobiotechnology. So these yeasts, when take up metals, they have mechanisms to deal with these metals. And as a result of one such mechanism, there is formation of nanoparticles. Yes, the yeast can bind or reduce these metals into tinier forms, that is nanoforms. And that's why my lab was interested in working with these yeast, which could produce nanoparticles, primarily cadmium nanoparticles. And that was the topic on which I started doing my research, that how these nanoparticles are synthesized, which proteins are used for binding or reducing these metals. So just a second.
Ma'am, you're not.
Okay. Any issues? I'm just trying to change the slide. So
Okay, ma'am.
these are the metal detoxification strategies which are used by yeast. The strategy which we were interested in were chelation with metal binding peptides, and was identified to be a metal called as phytokeratin. As you can see, this is the structure of phytokeratin. We carried out purification of these protein, characterization of these proteins using basic chromatography techniques like ion exchange chromatography, column chromatography, etc. We also carried out HPLC of these protein, and we characterized these protein. So it was known that this is the yeast which I started working on. For my PhD, I used two different kinds of yeast, Saccharomyces pombe and Saccharomyces cerevisiae, and I dealt with two different metals, cadmium and chromium. The crux of that was yeast metal interactions. How much of these yeast, how much of these metals can be accumulated by these yeasts? The purpose was either to use them for bioremediation purposes, that is removal of these toxic metals from environment, or use them for large scale nanoparticle synthesis. So coming back to this particular protein, this protein requires an enzyme called as phytokeratin synthase, and we had two options. One was to overexpress this particular protein using different model systems, that is take out the gene and express it in any other system. We had two choices. One was use the standard recombinant strain, that is use E. coli for overexpression studies, or use another model system which eventually became Saccharomyces cerevisiae for us. We could not do this E. coli part because before we started our experiments, unfortunately, another group worked on it and the data got published for using E. coli as a model system. So we had to look for another system. This is something which usually happens in research also. If you don't do it at that point of time, there are chances that your research might get something called as scoop. That is, somebody else does that if you don't do it faster. So we started working on two yeasts, that is Saccharomyces pombe and Saccharomyces cerevisiae. We screened a lot of yeast strains which we acquired from a standard culture collection. We wanted to look for a yeast which could take up a lot of cadmium. Yes, the target was having a yeast which could take up or accumulate a lot of cadmium. If it goes inside the cell, it gets converted into nano size, smaller. So we got two yeast. One was Saccharomyces pombe, which could take up almost 7.5 milligram per gram of cadmium, which is huge. And another yeast was Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which was 0.05 milligram per gram. You can see there is a huge difference in the values. What we decided was we will use Saccharomyces pombe and carry out something called as parameter optimization using statistical approach, where we will just expose it to different conditions and make it take up as much as cadmium possible, just changing the growth parameters. And the second one was making a recombinant or engineering a strain with phytokeratin synthase gene, which will be taken from S. pombe and put into Saccharomyces cerevisiae. So I'll take you to the first part, that is parameter optimization. A very simple thing which is done, which you all learn if you are from microbiology background. You know that parameters such as medium, composition, temperature, concentration of the metal which you want to be accumulated, all these things are considered to be the important parameters when you consider growth of that organism. One thing which we need to remember all the time when we are doing with all these things or working with these things is we need to keep the yeast live. If the yeast dies, then automatically the metal will never go inside the yeast. It will become toxic to the yeast and it will kill the yeast. So during all these experiments, the primary goal was keep the yeast live. So constantly we were checking how many cells remain alive and they continue to take up more and more of the metal which we are interested in. So for that, we chose a particular statistical approach, which is known as Taguchi design of experimentation, where you can carry out specific number of experiments. There is an array. There is a software which helps you in planning an array. For me, we chose a L18 array. So there I had to carry out 18 experiments simultaneously. I had 18 flasks with different combinations of medium. They were kept at different temperatures, different pH was maintained, and I was checking at which combination I get maximum of the growth. Tiny reminder, I already had 7.5 milligram per gram of uptake of cadmium, and the goal was to get maximum cadmium uptake, keeping my cells live. So these were the parameters which I was checking, and you can see there were 8 parameters which I was checking, and there were different combinations of these parameters. For example, I would do shaking with the medium to volume ratio of 2.5, tryptone concentration, yeast concentration, glucose concentration varying. At a time, one flask will have all these 8 parameters, factors, and different levels of those factors. So at the end of these experiment, you can see there was a variation in the amount of cadmium uptake, and there were few flasks which showed distinct uptake or increased uptake. It was the same strain. It was the same strain which was inoculated in all the flasks. The difference was in the parameters, that is the temperature was different, the amount of glucose was different, the amount of tryptone was different. So I was just checking which of these parameters, if I change, could give me maximum uptake. See, this doesn't change anything in the genome of the yeast, as well as it doesn't kill the yeast. It is just pushing the yeast towards maximum uptake of the metal. Then this data was analyzed using statistical methods like ANOVA. It's a very common method. And we got a particular set of parameters where you can see we started with 7.5 milligram and we could take it 5 times more, which was 30.4. We got increase without modifying anything in the cell. We could make it, we could push it for taking up more and more metal or taking up more and more metal for more and more nanoparticle synthesis as well. So this was one part where it made S. pombe take up more metal, thereby making it produce more and more nanoparticles as well. Then the second part we started with was heterologous expression of this PC synthase or Saccharomyces pombe phytokeratin synthase enzyme. This was a gene which was responsible for production of that particular peptide, that is phytokeratin. And for that, what we did was we chose Saccharomyces cerevisiae as the host and we carried out cloning experiments. These experiments were carried out, as I said, in Tech Chandigarh. And we checked whether we could successfully express this phytokeratin synthase gene and make that Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which was initially taking up hardly 0.5 milligram per gram of cadmium, take up more of cadmium. Again, the application was same, either make it apply it for bioremediation purpose or use it for the cadmium nanoparticles synthesis. Process which we carried out, we isolated the gene, that is this PPCS gene, by a standard protocol. PCR product was obtained. Then it was cloned in a yeast shuttle vector. Shuttle vectors are used for transformation and they can easily be transferred to another host. The gene was sequenced and it was confirmed that yes, the entire gene has been transferred, and a very standard transformation protocol was carried out, and the yeast, that is S. cerevisiae, was now having a plasmid with Tejasvini pombe gene in that. So we got our yeast engineered, or we got a recombinant yeast. Again, the criteria here was still the same. Don't give it so much that it will die. Get a ratio, get a point, optimum, where the yeast still remains live and the job for you. So what we got after trans, this is the initial SRCA, that is Cytosaccharomyces, which has got a neat pathway production of the basic molecule, that is glutathione. We also make glutathione, yes, under stress, under metal stress. That is, even higher organisms like animals, they also produce this particular molecule, which is called as stress molecule glutathione. In case of our S. cerevisiae, which was transformed with this gene, we got an additional peptide synthesized, that is phytokeratin, and it could take up more of cadmium after that. So we verified it with few techniques. We did a very simple assay called as spot assay, and we use very specific mutants for that. So these mutants, this is a control and this is a test where you can see that only few of these could manage growing in presence of cadmium. And this was because initially none of them could grow. This is control. And after transformation, they started showing improved growth. They could survive in higher concentrations of cadmium also. These are the strains which we had used. These are standard auxotrophs which are used for carrying out such kind of research. They are readily available in your culture collections, and you can use them for carrying out these kind of research because they can easily take up the shuttle vectors, and you can identify or you can check whether your vector or plasmid has been taken up with help of auxotrophic mutants. And auxotrophic mutants are the mutants which have a very specific metabolite requirement. So initially the strains which we take are, they are not able to grow if you don't provide them that particular metabolite in the medium. Whereas when you have a plasmid in that, transformation is successful, it is still able to grow without providing that metabolite to it. It can synthesize that metabolite on its own if it has the plasmid in that. So these were the strains which we were using or working with at that point of time. So after transformation, we decided to confirm it using HPLC, and this is the data for HPLC. These are called as chromatograms, and these are the peaks for the peptides which we were looking at. The peptide was really tiny. It was hardly 8 to 15 kilodalton protein. It was very tiny, and it was very difficult for us to actually perform these experiments because getting the protein from yeast, purifying it, because the amount of protein which we could isolate or get was very small. So we had to grow almost more than 10 liters of yeast to get few milligrams of protein. Beauty of these HPLC techniques is how much ever small sample you have, how much ever small concentrations you have, it can give you accurate results. So we could successfully see this protein produced in our recombinant, and these are which we obtained from the recombinant. Cadmium tolerance as well as cadmium uptake was checked for it, and we could successfully get a strain which could take up more and more cadmium in that. So this was the partial part of my research, my PhD research. As I told you, I was also dealing with another metal at that point of time. There was a company which had approached us, and they needed a strain, a yeast strain, which could accumulate more chromium. I was anyways working on accumulation of cadmium. So side by side, I also started working on accumulation of chromium, and they needed it to be grass certified yeast. That is generally regarded as yeast because they wanted to use it as an animal feed. Chromium enriched yeast was their requirement, and they had strictly told us that no GMOs or genetically modified organisms. So we had to play with the parameters. So we started with of yeast which could tolerate higher concentrations of chromium, and there is a tiny hitch in that. What happens is chromium exists in two valencies: chromium 6 hexavalent chromium and chromium 3, which is a trivalent chromium. So this chromium is kind of poor chromium, that is a trivalent chromium, and yeast does this transformation. Yeast takes up hexavalent chromium and it converts it into a trivalent chromium. It stores it inside itself, and if you consume a chromium enriched yeast, it is beneficial at multiple points. Even humans are recommended for consumption of chromium. And what we had to do was to reduce the chromium toxicity and produce a yeast, which will be chromium enriched yeast. So for that, we again played with the parameters. We chose different parameters, different chromium sources. We changed the exposure time. We changed the growth phase of the culture. We changed the pH, medium, etc. And we also did certain modifications in the yeast. We did a tiny change in the procedure. We started drying the yeast. We would dry it or reduce the moisture only to certain point in order to again keep the yeast alive without killing it, and then expose it to the chromium. What would happen is there is a same channel for chromium uptake as well as glucose uptake. If I starve my yeast, what happens is the minute I put it in glucose water, it doesn't realize whether it is taking up glucose or it is taking up something else. Boom goes my chromium inside. So that's what we actually did. We starved the yeast. We starved it only for a limited time. We stressed it out and then we exposed it to chromium and glucose water. Yeast took up both. It took up chromium as well as water. And we got a procedure where we could successfully make it take up more and more chromium. We had to verify it. So we verified it using two methods. One was a very simple UV spectrophotometry. When the chromium was in chromium 6 form, we could get this kind of spectra. Once it started converted into chromium 3, we could see a peak shift and we could actually see that the amount of chromium 6 was getting reduced and the amount of chromium 3 was increasing with different conditions. Another thing we did was we carry out a very interesting experiment using electron paramagnetic resonance spectroscopy. This can identify whether you have chromium 6 or chromium 3 in your sample. And after exposure to chromium 6, we could successfully show that it was getting converted into chromium 3. We again used the same approach, that is the statistical approach, and this time it was an array with 9 experiments. Previously it was 18 experiments. This was a tiny one, and using this we got specific parameters and we could get a very high amount of chromium uptake. We could raise it almost 10 times than what it was previously, plus we reduced the amount of chromium which was supplying. We could do it with very tiny amount, that is 10 ppm or 10 milligram per liter of chromium, which is very less. This was the protocol which we developed. This is a technology which we have transferred to an industry. It's a Hyderabad based industry named Unisankyo, and they have used this technology for large scale production. There was a scale up involved, so we actually started with the level as low as we carried out our first initial experiments, and Eppendorf's moved to flask 10 ml, 50 ml. We did a fermenter level experiment which was done at 1 liter, eventually 3 liter, and then later on it was successfully scaled up to 10,000 liter fermenter by the company. This was a technology transfer, and there is a patent which we have received for this particular technology. This was the part where I used yeast for my PhD, and which I did was using yeast for bioethanol production. This was carried out in USA, and this was supported by an agency called as Great Lakes Bioenergy. Here again, we were using recombinant yeast. It was Saccharomyces cerevisiae. The approach which GLBRC has is they want to utilize cellulosic material, the waste which is generated, agriculture waste, and converted into a usable fuel. Bioethanol is being currently explored a lot as an alternative fuel. We all know we are running into fuel crisis. The rate at which the fuel prices are increasing, all of us are looking for alternative fuels, and bioethanol has a wonderful prospect in that field, because that is something where we can actually take care of the waste which is generated, and we can convert it into something which is very useful. So the research was carried out for production of bioethanol. There is a lot of cellulosic biomass which can be converted into biofuel, bioethanol, but the problem is that it is rich in a sugar which cannot be easily fermented by Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Saccharomyces cerevisiae can ferment glucose. All of us know that ethanol production is something which is even college level students know that yes, ethanol is obtained by fermentation of glucose. Glucose rich substances can be used. But other sugars which are present, or other cellulosic material which is present in the plant waste, it is difficult to convert it into ethanol. So that is the basic challenge in using Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is really good at ethanol production for biomass conversion. The sugar composition which we have, there is xylose sugar. There is no way Saccharomyces cerevisiae can ferment xylose. So we need to navigate with Saccharomyces cerevisiae. It cannot ferment xylose. What the first thing was done was genetically engineered is cerevisiae to use xylose. I did a tiny part in that. I'll be telling you which part I did. What I got was I got an engineered is cerevisiae, and what I had to do was I had to check how much of ethanol it is producing in different conditions. For that, there is something called as ammonia fiber explosion hydrolysis, which is done, which is bioconversion of this waste. You can see this is the kind of waste which we get, agricultural waste. So for that, it is converted into something called as this ammonia fiber hydrolysate. This hydrolysate is very toxic, and yeast can be killed because of this hydrolysate. There is an intermediate step also, which is called as simultaneous saccharification and fermentation, where this is enzymatically digested and then it is provided to yeast for consumption. So this also helps in ethanol production from yeast at elevated temperatures or higher temperatures. So for that, the engineered yeast were created, and this yeast had genes from a bacteria, that is Clostridium, sorry for the typo, Clostridium phytofermentans, which has a gene that is xylose isomerase, which can convert xylose into xylulose. Another gene came from another yeast, that is Pichia, and this could convert the xylulose to xylulose 5-phosphate. This is the form which yeast can use. This is the form which Saccharomyces basically can use for production of ethanol. So the cassette was created. This was again a vector, a plasmid, which had this cassette, and then it was integrated in the Saccharomyces cerevisiae. When these strains were created, they were exposed to something called as adaptive evolution. Now, what is adaptive evolution? You adapt those yeast gradually to certain conditions. Here you can see they are grown in normal aerobic conditions, providing proper dextrose or glucose and xylose in addition to glucose. What happens is the glucose helps in survival of the yeast, and once glucose is over, it starts using the xylose as a secondary source. Saccharomyces cerevisiae can use xylose, but they cannot ferment xylose. Okay. Then the same cells were exposed to anaerobic conditions. You can see a cap on that. So when you try to grow them in anaerobic conditions, some of them adapt to that situation. Some of them survive that situation, and then you take them forward. Then you add the hydrolysate, which you remember we had made by digestion. This hydrolysate is then used and the cells are exposed to is much higher in anaerobic conditions. See, it is very well known that ethanol production is in anaerobic conditions as compared to what it is in aerobic conditions. So we had to train cells. We had to take them from aerobic to anaerobic, and then it was given or it was sent forward to anaerobic conditions. So this is how the setup used to be. These are the cells which are grown in aerobic conditions, and these are the cells which are grown in anaerobic conditions. Here you can see there is a limited oxygen supply. Because of this kind of corks which had water on their tops, what happened was there was very less amount of oxygen given to them, and the ethanol production was anaerobic. We checked how much of xylose was utilized, how much of ethanol was produced, and overall what was the ethanol yield by these different adapted strains. See that when adaptation was complete, they could utilize xylose in anaerobic conditions also. This was how I have used yeast for different applications. What currently I am doing is the quest has continued, but now with wild yeast. Now my master students are doing some research, and this is a setup which we have where we have tried to check if we can produce bioethanol from different media like wheat straw, peanut shell, and molasses is the standard media which we use, and we could successfully see that yes, bioethanol production is possible, and the yeast which we have used here is isolated from pomegranate shells. Along with these strains, we also have a few more strains which have been isolated from fruit waste, and they are Kodamia and Candida strains, and these are the most unexplored varieties of wild yeast, and I'm hoping that we'll definitely come up with something very interesting and some very interesting applications associated with these yeast. So that's all from my side. I'll be happy to take any questions if you have any related to the PhD work or the postdoc work which I've presented to you.
Dear participants, if you have any questions or if you have any doubt, you can use the chat box. Dear participants, if you don't have any doubt, I'll be sharing the feedback link. A humble request to everyone to please fill the feedback form and then exit the session. Thank you. I request everyone to kindly wait. Thank you so much, ma'am, for the wonderful talk. Now I would like to invite our founder coordinator to address the participants.
Audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay. So, very good morning to one and all, and all my heartfelt thanks to our eminent guest speaker, Dr. Tejaswini Pachpor, ma'am. And I thank you for accepting our invitation for the webinar. So, it was an inspirational story about your journey to be a successful woman scientist. The topic of your research and your collection is so useful in this time. And you know, in the way you share your knowledge regarding this topic was so impressive, attractive, and encouraging. for all the body researches, because literally I was enjoying it, and I hope all are liking too. Thank you for making your time and share your work with us. And it's give me a immense pleasure to deliver a vote of thanks to today's speaker, Dr. Tejaswini Pachpor ma'am, and also all the participants. Once again, I thank you, ma'am, for giving such an special talk. Your dedication and your work field, not only science and your betterment of a scientific society, is really a commendable. Hats off to you, ma'am. As a woman scientist, as a long journey of your research is so impressive. I'm looking forward for you guidance in future too. Thank you, ma'am. And now, and my heartfelt thanks to our organizers, event coordinator Dr. Kavita ma'am, and our organizers Ms. Neha Mahajan, Ananya Chakravarti, Devasri Roy, faculty members Ms. Somuju Bhargavi, Vinita Tiwari, Priyanka, and my dear students and researchers. Thank you for joining and invest your precious time and for listening the talk and support us. Last but not the least, on the behalf of Biosetup Life Science, I thank each and every one for contribution to make this inspirational talk a webinar a successful one. And I'm looking forward for arranging many such events to let people know about the process made in science. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day.
I would like
Thank you
to
so much,
answer a
sir.
question which is
Yes,
there, which
ma'am.
says
In
what
the
is the
chat box.
application of cadmium uptake yeast. So cadmium uptake of yeast can be used for bioremediation purposes because a lot of high amount of cadmium is released by paint industries, textile industries. It is very regularly used in their different processes, and it's a very toxic metal. So this high uptake yeast can be used for bioremediation purposes, and it can, as I said, the other application was to get more amount of nanoparticles, that is cadmium nanoparticles can also be generated in large amounts using these high uptake yeasts or cadmium uptake yeasts.
Dear participants, if anyone else is having any question, you can post it in the chat box. Okay, so I guess we don't have any questions. So I'll be posting the feedback link. A humble request to all the participants to please fill the feedback form and then exit the session. Thank you.
Okay, there's another question here. Why S. cerevisiae was transformed when S. pombe was better uptake of yeast? S. pombe has a better uptake, definitely, but in S. pombe, initially what we were trying to do was, is it possible to have an overexpression? That is, can we have two genes or two copies of genes? So it was not found to be possible that we do it with S. pombe. There are very few vectors available for that. So what we did was we did it with S. cerevisiae, and since S. cerevisiae is already GRAS certified, it is considered to be safe. It would be better to use S. cerevisiae as a recombinant. That's why we did it in S. cerevisiae. I'm sorry, but I have no information about the plants for bioremediation of cadmium. Yes, to answer Dr. Pal's question, there is a lot of scope on bioethanol production using yeast. A lot of research work is currently going on in India also for bioethanol production. There are few companies also which are interested in doing bioethanol production using yeast and using agricultural waste primarily.
Dear participants, once you have filled the feedback form, you can exit this session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.